Let's get into it. Soul Not For Sale. No, it's not Soul Not For Sale. This is just Coach Colin here. Coach Colin Media. What's going on, everybody? We got Tucker Carlson, Glenn Greenwald. Now, what they're talking about in this episode is they're talking about questioning Israel. And of course, when you're talking to Tucker Carlson, you're talking about not being able to question Israel. And I really like to make the distinction. When you question the Israeli government, you are not questioning all Israeli people or all Jewish people throughout the world. You would not think that someone is anti-Canada if they're anti-Trudeau. You would not think someone is anti-America if they are anti the Biden administration. It's such an odd thing that we do that in regards to Israel. People, when they're talking about Israel and the decisions that are being made, that is obviously the government and not the guy who's selling oranges at a fruit stand. Just want to make that clear. Anyways, they're talking about not being able to question it, what happens with that. And of course, if you're talking to Tucker and you're talking about Israel, Ben Shapiro comes up. So Glenn Greenwald calls out Ben Shapiro and Barry Weiss, and then Tucker Carlson gives a little bit of a jab to Ben Shapiro for his whole don't ask questions. Asking questions is bad. It's conspiratorial. That whole thing that Ben was getting into. So we're going to start with this. Then I'm going to show you what Ben said in case you just didn't hear it. And then I'm going to play a clip of Patrick Bet-David also calling out Ben Shapiro, but in the nicest of ways. Let's get into it.
Harm economically the citizens of other states. Andrew Cuomo actually ordered boycotts of American states while at the same time banning anybody from boycotting the state of Israel. It's a single country that has all kinds of special privileges and rights. And let me just tell you another thing.
Did anyone say anything about this?
Well, I was writing about it all the time, but few people cared. Finally, those cases got brought to the courts, and thankfully courts have overwhelmingly, almost unanimously said this is a grave violation of the First Amendment and are being struck down. But I'll tell you something so amazing. This just kind of encapsulates it for me. So Ben Shapiro, a good friend of yours, and a longtime political ally, obviously one of the main kind of unifying is that we shouldn't have job set aside for certain groups. We shouldn't have, shouldn't judge people based on the color of their skin or their ethnic group when hiring.
Or their religion, or it should be a meritocracy, or can you do the job best?
Exactly. So Palantir, which is an intelligence corporation that was started by Peter Thiel, and that has all kinds of contracts with the CIA, the Defense Department, but it's run by Jewish vocal supporters of Israel, announced in October or November, after hearing all this stuff about Jewish students being discriminated against because of their views or whatever. And it was never really Jewish students. It was pro-Israel students who support the war, because a lot of these protests have overwhelming numbers of Jews inside these protests. Protests against Israel. Yeah, so it's not a hostility toward Jews, it's a hostility toward anyone who supports this war that they're protesting against. Palantir announced that they were creating 180 new jobs that were available exclusively for Jewish students on campus who felt like they were being made uncomfortable. It was 180 jobs. No Christians could apply, no Muslims could apply, no atheists could apply, no black people, only for Jews. Ben Shapiro saw that, and he went onto Twitter, and above that Palantir announcement said something like, wow, this is fantastic. And then after his own followers spent the day saying, what do you mean? This is exactly the thing you're supposed to oppose. At the end of the day, he was kind of forced to say, yeah, you know what? Maybe it would be best if it were open to everybody. But like, what's the point of the announcement? He would never have commented on it. Obviously, he was happy about that. Barry Weiss, same thing. Ms. like anti-woke. This is identity politics as pure as it gets, creating 180 jobs solely for Jewish students. And it's, I think, very hard to make the case that Jewish Americans are like an endangered or marginalized minority in the United States. Very, very hard to make that case. When she saw that announcement, she put this like very excitement, wow, on top of it. And so you see this like utter and complete abandonment of what these people have been claiming were their principles, not even in defense of their own country or people in their own country, but this foreign government in Tel Aviv. And when you watch something like that and you see a political movement expose itself as a complete fraud. Now, I should say there are a lot of exceptions to like hardcore conservatives, like Chris Rufo has often condemned some of these bills. You have too. Candace Owens has too. Tom Massey in Congress has been like incredibly steadfast to the point where AIPAC tried to take him out and failed. He just won his primary with like 76. But overwhelmingly, the pro-Israel sector of the American right has proven itself to be such utter and complete frauds about virtually every value they've spent the last decade pretending to champion and believe in. And it's been sickening to watch.
The reason it's scary is, again, has nothing to do with Israel at all, about which I have like less emotion than most Americans, apparently. I just don't care that much either way. But what's scary is if there's an alignment between left and right, which is to say everyone with institutional power, on the question of speech. In other words, if you say something I don't like, I can put you in jail. Then it's a totalitarian country.
By definition.
By definition.
There is no totalitarian country in history that has offered free speech. And conversely, there's no totalitarian country in history that has refrained from using censorship, which is one of the reasons why it's so bizarre that if you now wave the free speech banner, you're accused that code is like fascist. It's like, show me the fascist country that actually offers free speech or that doesn't use censorship. It's like a hallmark of fascism to do what you're doing. But
I know. And I've been attacked recently for just asking questions by the right. I've been on the right my whole life, like since childhood, and you're just asking questions. Like, well, yeah,
that's kind of like important to be. But here's the other thing,
Tucker. First of all, it's my job.
This is the other amazing part of it is like, very well that under Trump, and I think this is one of the things that Donald Trump has done that has been very positive, is he dragged the Republican Party away from the kind of Bush-Cheney neocon orthodoxy, and even like going back to the kind of Cold War of endless wars and stuff, by saying like we shouldn't be focusing on all these other countries, and we should be focused on our own citizens, especially because they're not doing very well by every metric. Right, every city is filled with like addicts and communities that are being devastated and falling infrastructure. You compare the infrastructure of the United States. Every time I come here, I like come to an airport and see roads, and you go to, Asia or like places in the Gulf or, and even in Western Europe, the difference is so obvious. It looks like it's a crumbling country on every level, and we're spending all this money to benefit other countries. So the Republican Party has basically rebranded as America First, based on the idea that our primary priority should be the people of our country. I can't tell you how many Republican members of Congress or Republican journalists or pundits I've interviewed over the last 2.5 years who say we can't be financing the war in Ukraine because we don't have the money to be financing other countries' wars, nor should we be doing that. Our focus should be on our own country. And every single time, well before even October 7th, I would ask them, does that also apply to Israel? And they would kind of stammer and stutter and not want to say it. But now, you say like you don't care about Israel, and I totally understand that. The problem though is that Israel has received far more aid from the United States than any other country by far over the last 3 to 4 decades. We pay for their military. We pay for every time there's a new war, we send them billions and billions of more on top of the $4 billion a year that Obama negotiated with Netanyahu. Not only do that, but we arm them. The bombs that they use to kill Gazan civilians come from the United States. And I think worst of all, we isolate ourselves from the entire rest of the world. Do you know how many votes there have been at the UN over the past 7 months where the entire world is on one side and Israel and the United States stand alone on the other? With, a couple of those tiny little countries that we often bribe, like Micronesia and Marshall Islands, the part of the coalition of the willing.
It's literally called Micronesia.
Yeah, exactly. Micro. It's like it's also just the standing in the world, like our sacrificing of soft power. So we give up so much for Israel in so many other ways that if you're an American citizen, you have to care about it, even if you don't want to. One of the stories we did.
What I meant was, I feel emotional. Like I just have like gut level affection for it because I've had such a nice time there, and I like so many Israelis personally and know a lot. And I just like, there's nothing more wonderful than having dinner in Jerusalem on a summer night. It's just, so I have a lot of affection. I guess that's what I'm saying. So I'm not sort of animated by, anything really. I'm just like I live here. So do my kids. So did my ancestors. It's like, I just care about this country. And if you're changing my life or stripping my rights from me that we've had for 250 years on behalf of any other place, you are my enemy. Like, it's just that simple. You are my enemy. I mean, I don't know what to say. I don't want even to even have this conversation.
Well, that's the amazing thing, is that the devotion to Israel is so great and so incomparable to the devotion of any other foreign country that it's to the point that their supporters of Israel, are willing to deconstruct and erode and sacrifice the core basic rights that as Americans, by definition, we're supposed to enjoy.
See, I won't accept
in defense
that.
Of that
I
other
won't
country.
accept
but that
that.
is what's happening.
This is my country. I'm from here. I'm going to die here. I will not accept that.
Very, very interesting conversation that they're having. And the thing about, you hear a lot of conspiracy, is there even really a conspiracy theorist? You know what I mean? Is that even a real thing? But just talking about Glenn Greenwald, he does not give into, I can say myself, I give into the conspiratorial. You know what I mean? I'll be like, what do you mean the earth is hollow? Let's talk about this. Hold on a second. You know what I mean? I'll go outside and start knocking on the street and be like, okay, it might be. Glenn Greenwald does not do that. He's just a straight up journalist. It's just straight up facts. It's just straight up research. He has sources. He will not give up his sources. I mean, the reason that he lives in Brazil is because he had part in what Edward Snowden did for America. And he was told at one point that he could not be guaranteed his safety, and he could not be guaranteed that he would not get arrested if he came to America. This was years ago. He's fine now, which is why he's on Tucker's show. But I mean, I'm just breaking down who he is as he says this stuff. He's not into conspiracy. He's just into straight up facts. It's very interesting that this call out for Ben Shapiro and Barry Weiss is coming way more from Glenn Greenwald. Tucker Carlson throws out the whole, it's so nonsensical. I've been, he's been demonized for asking questions by Ben Shapiro. But Glenn Greenwald goes really hard about talking about how they, talking about Barry Weiss, Ben Shapiro, people of that nature, they claim to be on the right. They claim to be, especially Ben, Daily Wire, the conservative of conservatives, And when certain things pop up, all of a sudden they start showing, I don't know, for lack of a better term, they start showing this liberal side of themselves every time this country comes into question. And a lot of people just sum it up quickly and just say, Ben is Israel first. And it kind of seems that way. It kind of does seem that way. But at the same time, you have to, I still watch Ben Shapiro. I see his show. He's not always talking about Israel. He doesn't sit around and talk about Israel. It definitely ramped up since October 7th, which I could understand on an emotional level. But then at a certain point, if he was still talking about Israel after the debate just happened, I'd be like, oh, buddy, get out of here. This guy's done. This guy's done. Unfollow, unsubscribe, everything. But, he clicks back in and he understands that he needs to focus on America. America is the thing to be focusing on 100%. But yeah, it's very interesting how he reacts, because when it comes to funding Ukraine, he had one opinion, which was, it needs to stop. And then when it came to funding Israel, which almost happened, sadly, because of October 7th, almost happened in the same breath. All of a sudden he was like, yeah, no, that definitely needs to happen. It 100% needs to happen. Interesting the way all of that has unfolded. And Patrick Bet-David put it really good. He said from October 7th and from what happened in 2020, the whole pandemic, people have been stripped and you can see who stands where very, very clearly. And that's a good thing, right? I mean, October 7th happened and it became, I remember just watching people just in lockstep, like Project Mockingbird style. People were just like, let's go to war. I expected it from Lindsey Graham. Nikki Haley, I didn't know that well. When I saw it from her, I was like, whoa. Then all of a sudden the Ben Shapiros and the Barry Weisses and all these people were just coming out of the woodwork. And I'm like, whoa. Everybody was just saying no war in Ukraine. And now it's this all out war, when in regards to Israel and versus Hamas. It was I was like, whoa, this is interesting to see. And I understood everything. I saw the images like everybody did, but I was like, you were acting like you were standing on principle when it came to the whole Ukraine thing. And now all of a sudden, because there's some emotion involved, all of a sudden all that went out the window. Because I can find you images of what's going on between Ukraine and Russia that are terrible. I've had friends who are, you know, I don't know what I would call it. They have access. I'll just say that. And they showed me some things and I was like, oh my God. I was like, Jesus. My one buddy's like, yeah, I'm watching this all the time. I was like, what? And it's bad. It's really bad. Just as bad as the stuff that you saw on October 7th. It was crazy. It was crazy, the images that I was seeing. But it's just interesting that all these people, probably neither of them have seen the images on either side of those events, and they still had this weird emotion kick up and all of a sudden became war hungry. You know, it was very odd. You know, Ben Shapiro completely flipped. Even when it came to, you know, what Glenn Greenwald said about the whole Palantir thing, only giving jobs to Jewish people. I detest that the same way I detest it when I hear that Boeing is looking at some, you know, the flight attendant, and they're like, you want to be a pilot? And she's like not nearly ready to be on her own. And they're like, put her on her own. Yep. No, you don't need some old white experienced man bringing you down, girlfriend. Get in there. I see that and I'm like, oh, that's terrible. That's frightening. Oh no. Oh no. You know, I don't like that at all when I see that for black people. And I would think the same thing in that situation. Any situation. If any tweet popped up and it said only these people can apply for these jobs, because I'd be like, okay, cool. Whatever. Even in this, when I hire people, you think I'm only going to hire conservatives? When I hire an editor, this and that? No. I'll have a whole spectrum of people. I don't care. It would be tough to have a communist. It'd be tough. We'd have to really hash some stuff out, that person and I. But, you know, if you were left leaning, right leaning, wouldn't really matter. You know, I'm not gonna only give jobs to certain people. I definitely wouldn't be like only black people. This is only gonna be for black people, or this is only gonna be for white people. Whatever. Preaching to the choir, I know. But let's get into what Ben actually said to Tucker. If you are a avid watcher of the show, you probably already saw me do a segment on this, but let's just touch on it. Quick minute clip.
You blame society. You don't have an answer. So it must be a conspiracy. There must be some sort, and you're just asking questions. You don't know, right? This is the game that is played by so many corrupt commentators, just asking questions. I don't have to show you evidence that something terrible is happening. I don't have to actually demonstrate how the thing is happening. I don't have to tell you who the problem is. Wink, wink. But I can just tell you right now that there is a problem. But even, and if I'm asked about it, hey, I'm just asking questions. Now, let me tell you something about just asking questions for a second. Just asking questions is a game for children. My son is 7. He can just ask questions. My daughter is 10. She can just ask questions. If you are 50 and you are just asking questions, I don't think you're just asking questions. I think that your level of curiosity is actually quite low. I think that you don't care enough to know or know enough to care. I think that the vast majority of people who are in the just asking questions business have an answer that they want to suggest, but they know there's no evidence for it, so instead they hide behind just asking questions. In other words, they're completely full of
Ugh, he sounds just like a black liberal. That's exactly how black liberals think. Oh, you know what you're getting at, and you know they're just inching towards throwing that race card at you, and you're just like, oh God, oh man. Let me guess. Everyone who's asking questions is racist against black people. And they're like, yeah, exactly. Oh my God, that's why we need reparations. I'm like, oh God, oh goodness. And actually in that clip, that was what Ben was about to get to. He was about to talk about how, you know, everybody who's doing that, at the end of the day, they're trying to bring up an anti-Semitic conspiracy theory about Jewish people running everything. Wow. Yeah, I hate that across the board. I hate people doing that across the board, man. I'm not one of those people that's like, oh, I'm colorblind or anything like that. I see color, and I know about all the stereotypes. And I see when they're true and I see when they're not. And sometimes they're true in me. Can't swim. Hey, I can't. I'm going to learn. But right now I can't. Some stereotypes are true. But I just, man, I hate when I see people just giving into that so hard. Just so hard. But yeah, definitely a hard call out from Glenn Greenwald on Ben Shapiro and Barry Weiss. And it's interesting that he's talking about how you can't call out that one place. It's very interesting. And even Tucker was falling victim to it. If you saw in the clip, Tucker was like, "Oh, I just have an affection. There's nothing better than sitting in Jerusalem." It's like, yeah, because Jerusalem's amazing. He's like, "Oh, I just know so many Israelis." Yeah, because Israelis are amazing. That's why we're talking about the government, man. Since when do we have to feel like a government's amazing and beautiful? When do we have to do that? Like, what? That's crazy. Like, yeah, the place is beautiful. The place is absolutely fantastic. You don't have to, you can be in love with a place and the people and the culture and not like the decisions that the government makes. Like, do I even have to explain that? Like, are we kidding me right now? You think if I go to New York, I have to love the governor of New York and Eric Adams? Yeah, okay. You think if I go to DC and I'm looking at monuments and stuff, I have to be in love with Biden and Kamala? Yeah, right. Get out of here. Get out of here. Not a chance. Getting a little vocal about that. I wasn't going to throw this clip in. It's a little bit more about Ben Shapiro. It's Patrick Bet-David talking about him. I'm just going to play just a couple minutes of it, just real quick.
Ben came out and said, we're a publisher. We're not a platform.
Right.
He's 100% right.
Yeah.
Of course you're a publisher. He said, we don't have to keep people here if we don't want to. Totally get it. But that position isn't necessarily an anti-conservative position. One would never say Candace is not conservative.
Yeah.
Candace is a conservative.
Yeah.
One would never say Candace is anti-freedom of speech, low taxes, small government. Candace is all conservative. No, and I believe right now, the last 4 years, it's been a kind of little bit of a weird climate.
Patrick, may I interrupt? I just thought of something else that may be helpful
Go
here
for
as
it.
well, right? I think part of it is also there are people at the Daily Wire like Matt Walsh, who we just mentioned, who is anti the United States giving support to anybody, including Israel, including Ukraine, including everybody, who has no problem remaining at the Daily Wire. So I think the issue is the perception of anti-Semitism.
Yeah, sure. No,
right?
That's a fair point.
Sorry to interrupt.
No, I'm glad you did. So that's a fair point you're making with the position he's in. I think he does a great job, by the way. I think he's got his own unique way of communicating. No, look, Ben has made it clear one topic, but the market's never known this, that you can't question that. It's not like it's in the bylaws. If you work here, you can't make a comment about Israel or questioning Netanyahu or any of this stuff.
I don't think that's what it was. Because Matt Walsh is still there, right?
But I get that, but Matt Walsh didn't question it at the levels that she did. Matt Walsh didn't go out there and say, going against Shmuley and some of these other guys, having the debate that she was having and calling them out. And she was probably a little bit more vocal and antagonistic, but that's her style. When you have you talk about sports earlier, certain like Golden State Warriors, Draymond Green. You're either going to protect Draymond Green or you're not. You're either going to defend Conor McGregor, your name is Dana White, or you're not. You're either going to defend Dennis Rodman or you're not. Not everybody can handle players like this. It requires a certain level of coach to know how to work with a Rodman, a Conor McGregor, or a, Draymond Green. They're not easy.
Okay, so just real quick, little bit of dishonesty coming from this gentleman here who is a part of the duo, this guy right here. Little bit of dishonesty coming from him when he said that about Matt Walsh, okay? Here's the thing about Matt Walsh, and I covered this as well. Matt Walsh had a problem with a law that was made for anti-Semitism. It was made by Greg Abbott, and he didn't like where the guidance for that law was coming from because it was a body that was outside of America. It was actually, I believe, Swiss. It had its roots in like Switzerland. It was weird. Okay? He had a big problem with that. He was saying that shouldn't be. There's already laws in place that help all people, so we don't have to make one that just helps one specific group of people. And that's what Greg Abbott did on college and university campuses throughout Texas. He made sure there's no tolerance for anti-Semitism on any campuses, but there was already no tolerance for that type of thing. Like you couldn't go there in like KKK robes and light things and say things about black people and be fine. They would be like, get out of here with that. So just here's a little difference. This is why they can't get rid of Matt Walsh. Matt Walsh is talking about an American politician, and he's talking about keeping America a certain way. Okay? So when he just linked that, he just said, oh, but Matt Walsh did not question the government of Israel when he was talking about this whatsoever. He just said he doesn't think aid should be sent there. But again, he's talking about American money and where it should go, and he thinks it should stay in America. He's not saying anything about any outside place. It's not his concern. And then another thing is, he did not question Benjamin Netanyahu. He did not question the Israeli government. He did not demonize them. He did not say anything bad about them. He was only talking about America and America's interest. That's it. Candace, on the other hand, actually did question the Israeli government because she was talking about the war that's currently going on between Hamas and Israel. So she actually was questioning what the Israeli government was doing, what Benjamin Netanyahu was doing, and if it's actually a good thing. And she was actually asking the question, why can't I say any of this? There was a whole thing. Everybody knows. So a little bit of dishonesty from this gentleman right here, acting like Matt Walsh did the same thing as Candace Owens. So why is Candace gone and Matt's not? Well, it's because Candace did something else. There's something else that I don't know about, even though, and I'm speaking as him right now, even though I know the CEO of the Daily Wire, I know Ben Shapiro, I've talked to them outside of cameras being on, and there's something else that I don't know and I can't name. That's being dishonest. We all know it was because she kept questioning things that Ben Shapiro, more than likely, had a problem with, obviously. And she was combating the Jewish community. And although Rabbi Shmuley is a more unhinged member of that community, it's still her debating and kind of warring with the community because they're very unified, right? So Shmuley is not somebody that everybody wants to stand behind, but at the same time, she's still going at these two rabbis. They're going at her. They're screaming anti-Semitism. She's screaming America first, and it becomes a problem. So it's definitely not even close to the same thing that Matt Walsh did. Listen, we're getting into like 30 minutes here, guys. I just wanted to play just a little bit of that. At the end of the day, with this clip, really good clip. It's Patrick Bet-David sitting down with the boys of trigonometry. It's at 50 minutes. 50 minutes until the end of the podcast is where you can hear him talk about all things that have to do with Candace Owens and the Daily Wire. But he's basically saying exactly what you just heard in the last little part there, is that she obviously questioned something that had to do with the Israeli government, Benjamin Netanyahu, and that was the problem. And these gentlemen are sitting there acting as if they don't know that that is actually a fact. I think we all saw that unfold. So again, just a little dishonest from Constantine there. Anyways, guys, it's very, very interesting stuff. Ben Shapiro, Tucker Carlson, the feud continues. Ben Shapiro did not respond to what Tucker Carlson just said because this interview happened just a little while ago. Ben Shapiro hasn't said anything back, hasn't said anything derogatory towards Tucker Carlson. I'm sure it'll fade off until there is another uprising of sorts in terms of what America should be doing in terms of aid and financing other countries, or actually taking care of their own citizens, especially the vets of the world, or not of the world, of the country. They need help the most, in my opinion. Anyways, guys, just wanted to bring that up. Interesting episode. Like, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff, and never feel bad for questioning any government of the world. Question an African government doesn't make you racist. Question a Swiss government doesn't make you anti-white. Question the Israeli government doesn't make you anti-Semitic. Question the American government doesn't make you anti-American. Keep asking questions. I'm out.